Right then, finally got here after a year, mate. A fucking year it took us. Matthew King, how are you, mate?
Good, mate, good. Yeah.
Good. How's work? Busy?
Yeah, really busy, mate. Big start to the year. I had a horrible January, van breaking down and stuff like that, but yeah.
The joys of working for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So, obviously we've been planning this for a long, long time.
Long time.
One of the co-founders of Man to Man, shall we say.
Yeah.
And it's all about you, this, mate. It's, we'll start off where you grew up, hobbies, interests, things like that, early days, sports, football, anything like that.
Okay. Well, bear with me as I get over my nerves a little bit. So I'm local, so grew up in Flintshire, grew up in Harden my whole life. I had a good childhood, really good childhood. I was massively involved in swimming, so I swam, from the age of, I'd say about 4, right way through till 24, literally. So that was my main focus outside of school. And inside of school, I really enjoyed school. Actually, I really, really enjoyed it. Did really well. I was good at sport. I was able to retain the information. So school was something that was made for someone like me. Do you know what I mean? Just in the system, you turn up to class, get good marks, and you're good at sport, and everyone likes you, don't they? So that was, I didn't have a difficult time in school. I know that's not common, is it? And I think school does. I think it's such a, because it's at the time when you're developing as a sort of a child into teenage years. I think it really forms very strong, like, neuro links and pathways in our brains that we take straight the way through to adulthood. And I think a lot of people who have a tough time in school find it very difficult to then pick themselves up after school. That's what I think personally.
Yeah, I think, well, a lot of the people that I've spoke to, mate, on here, there's, a lot of their issues, again, stem from when we were kids, whether that be bullying, seeing stuff when they were young with a family or parents or whatever.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, it stems from bullying in school, and that gives you this sort of dark aspect on life and, you hate everyone and the world's evil and all this when... So I agree with that. It's that neuroplasticity, as they call it, isn't it?
Yeah, at that age.
Yeah, it's the beliefs that we grow up with. A lot of the shit that we do when we're adults, mate, is because of, the beliefs that were instilled in us when we were kids.
Yeah, and reading a book at the moment, The Road Less Travelled, I posted a picture of it on the WhatsApp group, and he describes that as our maps. So when we are born, we build this map of the world, and it's largely to do with what we're exposed to as a child, what our parents' maps are like, and we build this map, and it's how we see the world, and it's really difficult to break down. Once that map's been set, and it becomes like almost so rigid, it's hard to break down and then change how our minds.
Isn't it something to do with, by the time we're 35 or something like that, our beliefs are already built in us, like the sort of the base for our outlook and our opinions and our beliefs on life is all cemented in, really. It's extremely difficult to change after 35.
Old dog, new tricks type thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, I always, because I've got 2 kids as well, like I always read these articles and on Instagram and these reels, like by the age of 7, the brain, the child has become the person they're going to be. Have you heard that before?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh shit, I've got 1 more year to not fuck my son up. Like, I've got to do this all these, and then you know what I mean? Like, that's like the pressure you have as a parent, looking at, because once you become aware of being able to change the way you see the world and understand that you've got these deep-rooted beliefs that form these anxieties and all this other stuff that goes on, just how you show up in the world, how you see people, if you think the world's safe or if it's friendly, you realise that, oh God, so you become very aware of then putting on to your children. When I read any self-help books now, it's very difficult for me just to apply it to myself and my childhood, because I straight away, when I'm reading it, like, if you grew up in a world, and your parents were like this, or
in a world,
in a world, if you grew up in a world where this was the the case, or this was the case, or your parents were this way, or you had this experience, this probably explains the reason why you may act like this way. And I can't help but read the book and just think of my son.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, okay, what can I do then? It sort of automatically come on to him, sort of thing.
You made a good point there, where how we see the world, and I think I've said before, our perception is equally our reality. How we perceive life and how we perceive the people in it.
It's a cliche, and like, it's sometimes when I go about my daily life and I'm just in my sort of autopilot and I'm just driving around and I sort of forget it, and then I remember and I think to myself, like, oh my God, like, it is literally the way that you think and feel. It does quite literally create the world around you. You're not necessarily going to make things float around the place and stuff like that, but literally, that's what forms your experience, isn't it? It's all internal. And that's all internal.
Some of the work that I've been doing now, a lot of it's based around that. So our perception equals our reality. Yeah. Our reality reality equal our beliefs. So what we perceive becomes reality, and then we believe that reality, whatever that perception is. And like, I've been doing a lot of work around trying to forgive a lot of the things that went wrong when I was a kid, and the people in it.
Yes,
I've been doing a lot of work on that, especially around my parents. And by doing so, it's took a lot of the anger away, and the even the self hatred for me, the hatred for myself, and some of the stuff that happened to me. And by doing that, it's changed my perception on reality and my outlook and things like that. And like, I'm in a massively different space now to where I was when I met you guys, 2 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
Like, my outlook's so much more positive now, whereas everything originally was doom and gloom. And
it's mad when you look back at yourself. I think if you do look back at yourself and you go, wow, I've changed so much, it shows that you're on the right path.
Yeah.
There's been times where I've looked back and reflected on like a year or 2 years, and I think, oh, I'm in the same mindset. So I'm not progressing forward and having that growth. But because we spoke on the phone, didn't we?
Yeah.
And I remember like chatting to you, and I remember thinking to myself, like, oh, I've been in that where you were before, where it was like you were just realizing that. I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong, like, you were sort of opening yourself up to this idea that you can sort of change the way 100%. That you see the world. Just that first door, and it's quite overwhelming, isn't it? And quite like, and you're like, I'm going to do a podcast. This is all that time ago, wasn't it?
It's quite. You don't really believe it either when you even saying the words like, I want to do this at the time, or I want to do that.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, there's no way I can do these types of fucking things. Do you know what I mean? I can't do this.
Yeah.
And then 2 years later, this is the 22nd episode.
Yeah.
And I'm just in a massively different headspace. Not perfect, nowhere near perfect.
No.
But, I've done probably more positive things for myself in the last 5 weeks than I did all last year, mate. And it's quite a moving, powerful thing. Like,
yeah. Have you had any, like, in that 5 weeks, any just sort of lulls in the mood where you've noticed that could have easily gone one way or another?
Yeah.
Because that for me is really, I can get that momentum going, and I'm a month in, not drank.
Yeah.
Exercising, eating well, connecting with my wife, connecting with my children. Yeah. But like, it is just for me, it's just a thing that I do have these moments where, whether it's overwhelmed or just whether it's in me, I can slip. I can wake up and I'm like, oh, and that could turn into a week, or I can just catch it and, okay, take the foot off the gas a little bit for a day or so, and then back into it again. You know what I mean? And that's the skill that takes ages to learn, doesn't it?
My standards can definitely slip, and they probably have over the last 5 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I wouldn't say I perform every day at even 90%.
Yes.
It's more like a steady 75% every day, rather than 1 day of 90, 1 day of 20. Do you know what I mean?
You see it all the time, don't you?
Yeah.
That's it. I'm going to do this. 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 All in one hit. It's like, okay, I'll see you in a couple of days, because you can't go from 0 to 100. You just can't do it.
No.
It has to be slow, steady, build that solid foundation, and then you can create something better for yourself.
I'll tell you the story. Was it last week or the week before? I've been learning neuro-linguistics.
Yeah.
And I'd learned myself this thing where I built it into me sort of mindset. That when I'm feeling a certain way, i.e. I want to go and have a drink, or I want to go out and like fucking self-implode, everything's dead stressful and all this, I tap myself on the shoulder and it instantly brings a memory back of when I was 15, because that's what I've built it. When I tap myself on the shoulder, it brings this memory. Yeah, that's
really powerful.
And it was a memory of when I was 15 or 16, when me and my mate had been smoking weed in this house. And even now it makes me laugh. And he asked Nick Lloyd, and he said, "Do you want some ham?" He had a big pack of ham. It was just funny as a kid.
Yeah.
And like now, when I'm thinking, I'm stressed, I just tap my shoulder and it takes me back to that memory.
Wow.
And it just cuts that.
That's cool.
That urge to like want to have a beer or something. I did it last week. It was the first time since Christmas.
Where you really had it?
Where I was lying in bed and I was thinking, I fancy a beer here. And I said it to my missus and I tapped myself on the shoulder and it went away.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Brilliant thing to use though.
Yeah. Because I find like discipline only counts when you, and it sounds really ridiculous, but discipline only counts when you actually don't want to do it. Yeah. Or you do want to do it. Only, like, because you said that 5 weeks, you probably haven't really had an urge. So
no.
Although you could have drank or whatever it is you're trying to avoid doing, you could have done those things. You just, in that such a good place, you don't want to. It's that moment where you really want to. That's when the discipline, it counts.
Yeah.
And it's like the fork in the road moment, isn't it? Of whether you're going to go down there or to go down there type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good start, mate. Nervous now, though.
Yeah, we went on a tangent. We were talking about my childhood. And then
it's all right.
Here we are now.
How are you finding it? You still nervous or?
Yeah,
feel a bit
sort of like conscious that I'm saying words. It's quite a strange feeling, isn't it? Yeah.
So yeah, we'll sort of once you finish school.
Yeah,
we'll go into the early stages of adulthood, drinking and stuff like that. Because obviously I know you before this, and when we've met in man to man and things like that.
Yeah,
we've spoke on early stages of drinking and how they led into some fucking far worse places where you went with your life. So just touch on that and sort of
don't mind sharing. So I think the culture, the UK culture, it's not for everyone, but it is. It's around here, whether it is all the UK, there is of our generation and older. It's like you would drink on the streets, parks, Frosty Jacks, the likes, and my friendship group I had, there was very much like it was who could get the most drunk, basically, and most wrecked and stuff like that. And I think it was quite. Don't really know, and I don't really speak about my drinking too much, to be fair. So this got to bear with me as I try and get my words out. But I think I just did it socially.
Yeah.
What happened was with me was like I lived. I would say I did this probably until I went to university. And I lived almost like two lives. I think when you look back, you can sort of like almost chapter your book, can't you, and turn it into a narrative, when in reality it's just a mess of choices you're making. When you look back, I did this and then this did, you sort of make it into this like really nice narrative. In reality, it's not that smooth, is it? It goes all over the place. So I think like if I look back and try and put it into some sort of uniform sentence, I would say that I had two worlds where I would be this sort of like head boy style guy in school who was getting like A's and performing at a high level in a competitive swimming environment. And then I'd also have this other side of me, which was excessively drinking, self-destructive, and struggling probably with my mental health. But I think sometimes you can struggle with your mental health without really realising it.
Yeah, definitely.
I lacked a solid male role model. My dad, a mentor, I'd say. My dad was a good role model as a dad, but I think a mentor is slightly different. I think a mentor is a bit more tough love.
Yeah.
And you need to maybe look up to them in a way. And it's hard to talk about your childhood without wanting to offend your parents, but you sort of like, it needs to be known that like, you're not saying that they were bad parents. Like that's just their experience because they were doing what they were doing and you were doing what you were doing. And I think that what I did was I looked for who was the role models around me, and I was looking up at older boys, people who were cool. Okay, I sort of formed myself into this character, like we do. And again, I'm writing my own story here. It wasn't as conscious as this. It's just probably this is what I think, sort of how it went. And they were people who were, drinking, partying, girls, sort of like maybe sort of toxic masculine role models. So I craved a mentor. I also didn't allow myself to get one. I found it difficult to be taught and coached. So where was I going with this? Anyway, that just I think that just continued, and I lived quite a reckless life trying to maintain both. When I got to university, it all sort of fell apart, and I think that's where I had my biggest conscious awakening of like realizing like, whoa, what's going on? I had a really intense psychotic moment where I got sectioned for 5 days. And I think it was just a breakdown of my ego to like the biggest degree. And that ever since then, I haven't been the same, basically. And I think I probably have some sort of, not diagnosed, but sort of like post-traumatic stress from there. And I think I had a very rocky then road right the way through my early 20s to probably about 24 or so, where I was continuing the same bad habits. But this time, I think there's a section, there's a part of bad behaviour. When we're younger, we do it and we have consequences, but it's just sort of fun as well. Then it becomes a point, this is my personal experience, where you know it's bad for you. You know it doesn't do you well, but you do it anyway, and you regret it before you've even done it, but you just almost can't help it. It's like you're coaxed in. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Can you relate? And then I did that, and that stage lasted probably
years.
Yeah, 6 odd years, and it did. I think it resulted, luckily, I would say, in me going to prison for a year because I got into an altercation, had a fight, and I hurt the guy, and I went to prison, and that was an awakening. But even then, I don't think it still didn't click. I think it probably clicked later on when I met my wife and had my kids and really stepped into being a man, I think, or still trying to become responsible, taking full accountability for everything that I do and think and say. And these are lessons that I'm learning that I think that is lacking in communities, because it's just not. I think school is one to blame. As you said, you sort of chuck a load of kids in this big environment, and some sink and swim.
Yeah,
and there's no one leading and guiding, and we're not learning skills about. For me, the biggest skill you can learn at any stage in your life is emotional regulation. I think that links into absolutely every aspect of personal growth and development. Emotional regulation is linked to discipline, because if you can't emotionally regulate, you won't be able to be disciplined and follow through with the acts. Communication with your children, communication with your partner, all. If you're getting triggered and getting, the only word I can think of is triggered. Some people think that's a bit of an overkill, and something happens which brings up an emotional reaction all the time, right the way through life. You're never going to be able to take control and take responsibility. Did I answer your question?
It's quite a lot to unpack there, isn't there?
Loads, mate. Yeah.
I think
you started me now.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not too sure.
Now you can.
Yeah.
I think the initial part of that, mate, is where you said you're looking for this mentor.
Yeah.
I think that's especially, and I don't take offense by this.
Yeah.
Sort of the lower scale of society. I come from a council estate.
Yeah.
I think especially where I grew up, there's a lot of single mothers and things like that, and there's young lads around. And we look for this mentor role, don't we? And if we see somebody who's cool, bigger, stronger, gets all the girls, you know, and good at sports, you think, oh, he's cool. I'll look up to him.
Yeah.
And then, you know, that if they're not a role model and they're somebody who's involved in all sorts, and then you get into it yourself.
Yes.
You know, I was drinking early, as most kids do. But I think there's a difference in having a laugh and drinking and then sort of the lifestyle that we lived in, where, like you said before, self-destructing.
It was full self-destructive.
Yeah.
It went from just full enjoying the hedonistic lifestyle when I was younger into, I'd say, self-destructive mode. I almost couldn't help it. That's what I mean. And I think, but I do need to say, like, my upbringing in terms of like the quality that I had was just you know, out of this world. You know, mum and dad provided so much. But
again, you're still searching for something that you didn't have.
Of course, it's connection, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's connection.
Yeah.
It's just you're a young lad out there reaching, aren't you? You know, you're just trying to, like, you know, your first experiences with women, your first sort of confrontations with other blokes. You're just looking for this, like, buzz all the time, aren't you? Just this thing is always out in the world, basically, aren't you, as a young lad? And that's what a mentor can do. He can channel that into things for you, can't they?
Well, you made a good point there, mate, about hedonism. And that was something that I chased for a fucking long time, mate.
Yeah.
This hedonistic version of what I thought what it was to be happy.
Yeah.
And it took me till I was 37 years old to realise that, you know, and I'm not going to beat myself up for it, but I'd lived my life chasing the wrong types of happiness. You know, I've said before, you know, I've been to Vegas, been skiing, Disneyland, all this stuff, which is nice, good memories for the kids and stuff. But
yeah.
I'd put myself in financial strain to do things like this, and you know what I mean? Some things that, you know, I shouldn't really have done because I didn't have the financial backing for it.
Yeah.
But to make yourself look like this certain type of person, again, hedonism. And that was probably a lot of my financial burdens over the last 10 years was because, you know, you're trying to keep up with the Joneses and you're trying to make yourself look to be this certain type of individual when there's deep, you know, I think I've said it before, I sort of created this avatar of myself, this version that I always thought that I was supposed to be. You know, this lad who'd done this, or he was a, you know, bit of a criminal or done stupid things, and I'm not any of those things.
Did like you, because I've always been a deep thinker, even growing up, like into philosophy and stuff like that, all the way. Despite, well, I was always like that. My mum encouraged that sort of conversation as well. So it was like around the house, those sort of conversations. It's like similar stuff we're doing now. So it was always there. But what was I going to say was, when you had this character that you had, like, did you in the background, were you fully convinced of it?
Yeah.
You was?
Yeah.
So you weren't thinking to yourself like, one might find out soon that I don't, or you would fully embody this?
No, I knew it was a character that I'd built in my mind, but I also was 100% convinced that I was that character.
Because it created your sort of stature and standing in the community.
Yeah.
You became this guy. You liked the response you got from people, and so you're getting like positive feedback loop, weren't you?
Yeah.
I act like this, I get this. I act like this, I get this.
People think you're cool. Look at this stuff you're doing. You know, you're involved in getting up to the no good, and people look at you and go, "Oh, Lee's doing all right," and you're not. Yeah. You know, you're walking around pubs all day, every day, and you know, doing class A's and drinking and being an absolute bellend of a human being.
Yeah.
But yeah, it took me till I was nearly 38 years old to realise that hedonism is something that I sort of based my whole life around.
Yeah. And like, you look back now, and I look back and I'm like, wow, I've got that experience has got zero, like absolutely zero on what I feel now when I, you know, having breakfast on the table with my kids in the morning, and it sounds like the biggest cliche, but it's such that feeling. It's like that wholesome. It doesn't feel like it's going to go soon. You know, like you about to run out of a bag. You're like, oh, it's going to go. This is crap. But like, it's just wholesome, and you feel like it's not like it's going to last forever, but it's just
No,
like
I know what you mean.
it's not a buzz. It's just
It's a real form of happiness.
yeah, it's just a real form of purpose, happiness, and just fulfillment, and yeah, really, really like, and that's what it's all about now, isn't it?
Round 2.
We're back.
How'd you find it?
Good, yeah. It's nice. I was just saying, you know, as you start talking, it just comes flying out, doesn't it?
Yeah. You find yourself like you feel like you're rambling, or just
Yeah, just
ping
go from one
ponging.
thing to the next. It's like, oh, I want to say that, I want to say that, I want to say that, I want to say that.
No, it's good, mate. Though it's good. Obviously, we were talking there about like the hedonistic forms of happiness, and then towards the end of it, you spoke about your kids.
Kid two.
Two.
Two kids, yeah.
Obviously, you got married last year, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, God,
So
don't test me live on camera, mate.
Married in September, I think it was. So yeah, just talk to me about how that sort of changed your outlook and your mindset and what it was to be, you know, responsible. Because the reason I want to hear it is because, like I said to you before, and I've said before, I spent a lot of my 20s. I had children when I was young, so I had my son at 19.
Yeah.
And I had my daughter at 23, I think. Oh, you're asking. And I wasn't very present for a lot of my 20s.
Yeah.
Because I was living this, I don't know, like almost like a formality. It was just drifting through the years, you know?
Yeah, I know. I can understand how that can happen.
Yeah, and it was tough because I was young and I always wanted to be the best type of dad that I could be. And towards the back end of last year, I was almost feeling like I'd failed. And when I say failed, it was only till I got some good advice off a gentleman who come on the podcast, and he said, "Why did you say failed?" He said, "You're 37 years old. You've got another 40 odd years of this to go. You haven't failed nothing. You've made some mistakes, but you know you're doing right by your children." And it was when I went on holiday last year with me and the kids and my missus, where we were in the water, me and my son, throwing. It was only throwing in American football. It was probably one of the happiest moments I've had. So he threw the ball over my head, and I turned around and started crying, mate. And it was like, fucking hell, I never thought I'd get this moment again.
Yeah.
And it was so powerful, honestly, man.
You have to be so present to feel like that.
Yeah.
And that is, I can relate to that. I have moments like that all the time where I'm just like, wow, this is awesome.
Yeah.
This is what it's all about. And it can be so mundane. It isn't the trip to Disneyland, although that would be amazing.
Yeah.
It's not that.
Yeah.
It's not the soft play. And it's like last Sunday, was it? We just like, right, we need to prep some food for the week ahead. And normally Rachel would do that. My wife Rachel would do that like during the week. But she hadn't had a chance to. So we just did it all as a family together.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
You know, I'm chopping the veg and my daughter's there. And Rachel weighing things out, music's on, talking. It's just like, wow.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. But you have to be fully present. And on that topic, I without going on a society rant, because I think you need to take full responsibility for yourself, but it doesn't allow us to catch ourselves enough to do things like that. You know, you got kids in school all day, dad's at work all day, mum's at work or she's at home doing whatever she's doing all day in terms of like homemaker or working herself. And you're only getting these like very small snippets of time in which like you're trying to connect with each other. And it's either in the morning when everyone's in a rush or at night when everyone's absolutely knackered. You're not having real connection. That's what's driving families apart. And it is, again, it's an old trope because you hear it all over online all the time, but it's just so true. And I think a lot of people live it. Some people know they're living it, like me. I'm like, God, this is so frustrating. So I try and create my life in such a way that I find moments throughout the day to connect. But some people don't know. And they think that's the only way to live. And they go on that, as you said, just going through the motions. Yeah. And next thing you know, it's 10, 15 years down the line, and you're like, oh, what have we done? Yeah. You know.
It's funny you should say what you said about it's not the Disneyland, which it's not. I've always said to...
but it is great, though.
Oh, I fucking love it. It's brilliant. I've been there three or four times now.
Really?
But I've always said to me kids...
Shut off.
And skiing.
Yeah, you've already mentioned that, mate. I didn't pick up on it.
But I've always said to my kids, and they've always said this to me, what was their favourite holiday?
Yeah.
And it was a log cabin in Machynlleth for Easter.
Yeah.
For 2 nights.
Fuck.
In the middle of a fucking cow field, mate.
Yeah.
With a hot tub and just the one log cabin. That was it.
Yeah.
And my daughter always says that was her best memory of going on holiday with me.
Yes.
Because we do like a little Easter egg hunt and we'd all go looking for chocolate and things like that.
Yeah, I heard that. Like, I think that this is like something that dads can take away is that I heard this as well, and I must be on a podcast. Everything I say, I've heard. I'm not no original thoughts here, just repeating what someone said on a podcast. It's like how you very rarely look back in your childhood and go, well, maybe I'm going to speak out of turn here, but you tend to look at the sunnier side of things. Your children will, you know what I mean? They'll look at the more positives when they look back. Like that holiday, you that's just like you probably forgot that holiday, but for some reason it's stuck in their head that moment of connection, you know. And because I think as parents, I think this day and age more than ever, people can get really hard on themselves, really hard. There was a time I feel whether parents were like this in our generation, but I felt like the pressure wasn't as intense. You weren't like, you know, you sort of brought your kids up, you went to school, you went to work, and that was okay. And people doubted it. Whereas now, because there are other options out there, people feel like they should be doing other things all the time, and it's not quite enough all the time. And there's like guilt in relation to development of your child or the time you're spending with them and stuff like this. I think that's quite. I don't know whether parents felt it in the past because I've not spoken. I'm just speaking about myself now, but I think it seems to be more amplified, probably through social media, isn't it?
Yeah,
I'd say so.
Again, social media gives us this...
The comparison, isn't it? That's what I was trying to get at. Yeah, it's that comparison.
It's the perception of how perfect life is when you look at social media.
Yeah.
You know, everything that gets... The thing, and someone, I can't remember who it was who told me this, social media only ever perceives the perfect version of you.
Yeah.
You don't ever go on there when you're having a fucking breakdown at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And post a picture of yourself bawling your eyes out or going absolutely mental.
Yeah.
It's always a perfect photo with perfect lighting. If you're on holiday, it's
the hot dog legs and the cocktail. It's not like stressed out at the airport and like, get in now. Where's
exactly.
The passport? Who's got the passports?
Yeah.
You know.
And I think obviously as a society, we look at social media and strive to be that sort of perfect version of ourselves when deep down nobody's fucking perfect. You know, we said it before, and I've said it, we make this shit up as we go along.
Yeah.
We can have all our journals and go to the gym and diet and all that, and emotional regulation's massive, but we're still fucking making it up as we go along.
Yes.
60 seconds down the line, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how we're going to react.
No.
You know, and that's the beauty, and that's one thing I've realised, that's the beauty of life now.
Yes.
Is, you know, the fear of the unknown, the fear of being vulnerable enough to allow yourself to have all these mad emotions and experience all these feelings and light, all colour, everything. It's mad, mate. Like,
you feel like you're going on that journey of like really allowing yourself to
feel
the emotions. Yeah.
I really feel as that,
because I'm on that journey myself as well. Because I used to see myself as quite an emotional person, but I realised, you know, my emotional availability is so. I'm having to really. It takes a lot. I think it takes a lot for. I do think it's a men's particular stereotypically. But again, I'll just speak for myself. For me to be able to, I feel it, but I can't. It doesn't come out there. And I admire people who are able to do that. You know, they have a thought, a feeling, an emotion. It just comes out. They're able to explain it or share it. But my go-to sometimes is to quiet, stay in there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
I think it's a common thing with men, isn't it?
Yeah, I feel like it is,
we sort of block up or bury things that we want to say or an emotion that we need to feel.
And that's like what we found in Man to Man. What I found in Man to Man was we'd have this group and men would come, and when they're feeling really positive, they would come as well. But like, you could tell when someone was having a hard time because suddenly, not heard from him for a couple of weeks. Yeah. It's because he's...
That's true. That's a good point.
It would, wouldn't you? You'd be like, and I think that's what men do. They withdraw. I can handle this, and they just go within themselves.
Yeah.
and that sometimes can help. But I do generally believe that if you've got a close, trusted group of men around you that you can share the problem with, it does enable you to see it from a more subjective perspective, and I think you can come out of it quicker as well. Because men tend to just withdraw, don't they?
That's an interesting point, and I've never really looked at that from even when we were, man to man was very interactive and everyone was involved, and there was 20, 30 of us in there.
Yeah.
And then I'd either go quiet or Woolen would go quiet.
You'd see him just drift off, and then you're like,
something wrong with him.
Yeah, me and Dane and Cal we'd be like talking, or they've gone quiet, or I haven't heard from them for a while. Do you want to reach out to him? Because like we know, and sometimes it's not like come on mate, come round. Oh, you all right? It's just like I mate, notice you quiet.
Yeah.
You're doing all right, and then you'll get the same message every time. Yeah, just going through a bit at the moment, mate. But I'll be back on it next week.
Yeah,
same message every time. It's just like I know. Just sometimes you can't. And again, it's linked into the family, linked into the setup of society. Is that you can't handle it all the time, and sometimes you have to prioritize, and you might go quiet on that. You have to neglect the training because you need to prioritize your kids' routine. You need to neglect work a little bit because you're not training so much. You have to make this like impossible balance, and that's what men are trying to handle. And I think there's an added element now that men are expected to be really emotionally available, really emotionally safe for their kids and family. And I don't think we all have the skills and that extra dynamic, as well as the work, as well as the exercise. Everyone's got to be in shape now and eating this type of food. This whole, whatever you want to call it, like triangle of just madness, I've heard it described before, is really difficult to...
I think it's impossible to achieve.
It is, but it's about like having the strength to understand which bits need this care and when to pull away, when to come back in on different aspects of your life. And it's a juggling act.
And like we said, a lot of it's moderation, isn't it? We've got to moderate properly and understand, like, and I've been quite guilty of this over the last year or so, especially in my relationship, is putting myself first a lot of the time, thinking that I'm going to be better for my relationship.
No.
But in turn, probably causing a lot more stress on my relationship with my missus.
Yeah, in relationships, like I would say the number one tip I would have is that it's about that conversation that you're avoiding because you're scared of the reaction. I'm an avoidant, so if it's a different conversation I've got to have, I'll not deliberately like avoid the conversation. I'll just always have an excuse. Yeah, a valid excuse as well as to why I can't have the conversation. And like, but once you have it, and you
how is an excuse valid?
Excuse valid? Well, like, so like, I can't tonight because I've got to do that invoice, or do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
When in reality, I should be prioritizing the conversation. Yeah. But I can tell myself that. But once you have the conversation and you work through it, it's that ability to communicate.
Yeah.
Once you come out the other side, oh wow. You're so much stronger as a couple now. Do you have those moments?
Yeah, massively, mate. And I think that's
it becomes addictive, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's very much part of the reason why I've grown a lot over the last 12 months is because of having those sort of conversations with my missus, and especially if I've not recognised or realised something that's going on, and then she'll go a little bit quiet, and I'll say, "What's the matter?" And she'll say, "Oh, nothing." And then eventually we'll sit down and have the conversation.
She'll bring it up, and then you're initially like, you get your back up, you start defending, and then once you accept that they're just sharing something with you, trying to help you, right, okay, and then you try and understand.
And maybe selfishly, mate, I think a lot of it's been like, because I've done a hell of a lot of work on myself mentally, more so last year.
Yeah.
I was still making a lot of mistakes last year, mate.
Yeah.
But mentally, I was learning from all of them.
Oh, yeah, it's a continuous process.
Yeah, and like, even these first 5-6 weeks of this year, I've done a hell of a lot of mental training. I mean, nutrition and diet's massive at the moment. But I think because I'm putting myself first in a lot of these categories, I think I'm giving out, well, I know I'm giving the perception as though she's not as important as what I'm doing, which is far from the truth,
what I would say is like, it's. I remember having this conversation before. I've read it or heard it somewhere, but it's like you can go off and do all this work as much as you can. I'm going to learn how to emotionally regulate.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the gym and all this stuff. But it's only really comes to like fruition when you actually, because what we hear, we want communication, connection with people, don't we?
Yeah.
That's like the fundamental of what we want, isn't it? Why do we do what we do? We want to feel loved and loved back, yeah? So, but you go off and do all this work on yourself, but it only really works when if you come back to your wife or your children and they do something and suddenly you lose your shit straight away. It's like, you can only really practice when you're actually in the moment with a real person.
Yeah.
That's where the real work's done, isn't it?
Yeah.
You do lots of inner work, but then the real work comes when you start interacting with the world around you, and also then able to maintain your integrity and your emotional regulation in those moments. That's where you're really tested.
I definitely feel as though I'm a lot more emotionally regulated outside of, not saying I'm off the hook in the house, because I'm not. I don't think I've ever lost my temper, ever with me missus. But I feel as though I understand society a lot better than I understand myself. You know, is that,
yes, yeah, you can handle yourself. Yeah.
I can handle everything, all this craziness out here, and all social media and all that bollocks.
Yeah, you're one step removed, though, aren't you?
Yeah,
all the time.
yeah.
When you're walking around.
Yeah,
it's when you get into those deep, meaningful conversations with someone who
you care about.
Well, you're going to commit to spending the rest of your life with this person. You can't live that life forever.
Yeah.
And they'll see through it. Especially a good woman will see it, and they'll say, "I need you to be this person," not like in a "you need to change."
Yeah.
I know who you can be.
Mate, I've had that conversation. So when we first got together, I told her, she's always said, you're dead good at thinking of really brilliant things to do, but I'd procrastinate a lot.
Yeah.
And I'd say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this.
Would you get defensive? Well, yeah, but obviously,
But again, she said, I know who you can be as a person. I've seen it.
Yeah.
Even if it's for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I've seen this person that you can be.
Yeah.
Just want you to be that person.
Yeah, don't underestimate the power of a really, really good woman by your side.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know, because they're going to put the mirror up to you, and that's what you need.
Yeah.
Because it'll only make you a better person, leaning into that discomfort. And you avoid it, and sometimes they'll let you avoid it. Okay, all right, well, I'll just... And then they'll mention it again, and you're like, God, you're always saying that. You're always going on about that.
Do you know what it is with me, mate? Because she does. She holds the mirror up a lot. And it's like, she'll do that, what you said. And even when you said it, then it got me fucking back up.
Sometimes, like, have a day off, will you? Like, because we had that burden. We're like, look, I've been in work all day. It's that excuse, like, I don't need this now. And they're like, I've not spoke to you all day. I need to have this conversation now. And you're like, but, you know, I'm knackered. I've got to do it.
It was that one word that you just said then, okay. So, like, if there's a conversation that needs to be had, and I'm like, you know, can we just do it tomorrow? And she'll just go, okay.
Yeah.
And then I'll sit there thinking, what do you want to talk about? So in the end, it's like, right, let's do it now.
Yeah.
Let's have it down.
Avoidant? She's like, wants to sort it out.
Yeah,
or,
definitely.
I do think that, because if you were both, I don't know, it's like yin and yang in it. It's always that balance. If you were both in, you'd just be at it all the time, wouldn't you? I suppose. Maybe, I don't know. And
I think sometimes you've got to, and she definitely has with me, you've got to understand that, you know, sometimes we do just a mistake's a mistake, or, you know, when you've not done something or you've had a bit of a bad day, just let it go. You know, sometimes, and she does that a lot with me, to be fair.
Yeah. What's that, like a standard within the house or a standard within your relationship?
Yeah, a bit of both, maybe.
Yeah.
But I think she knows me better than I know myself, mate. So if I'm about to have a bad day mentally, which I still do now.
Yes.
Whereas last year I'd isolate a lot, where I'd literally take myself in the bedroom for 2 or 3 days, and that's it. Now my bad days are nowhere near as bad.
Yeah.
So if my bad day is a case of sitting on the sofa for a few hours with a cup of tea, she'll let me.
Yeah.
Because she knows
it's understanding. Yeah.
I'm about to have a really difficult few hours.
You're just dealing with shit.
Yeah.
And that's the understanding. But you can only get to that stage once you really get to know each other.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. I generally think...
Because what can happen in a relationship, sometimes, like, you go quiet, and then that other person will be like, they're in their head going like, what's talking to me? I've done something wrong. But in your head, you're just thinking, I hope they're not worried I'm being quiet, because I just need that time just to think something. What's the one for you both then in this defensive, triggered, like, vulnerable state within your own heads?
Yeah.
the one thing that would get you out of it is a conversation. Now that's me talking from a position of someone who never does that, but like I know that's the right thing to do at times, and when I've got the ability to, I do it, you know, and it makes for a more fulfilled, connected family life. Do you know what I mean? We're not just passing ships at night.
And I think that's sort of probably the one thing that I'd need to work on more than anything is that, because I always think it's about me and my feelings, you know. Well, I'm struggling. I'm the one who talks about mental health all the time, and you know, nobody's going through what I'm going through, we got a lot of people think like that. Whereas,
so she doesn't feel like she's allowed to take up space of her emotional vulnerability.
Yeah, of course.
That's what Lee does. Lee's the guy who does that, and I'm there to support. But in reality, she needs that space to talk.
And she said to me a few times, you know, well, what about me?
Yeah.
And it's like,
and like that's sometimes you're like, what about you? But it's like that's the last resort, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where she's come to that point type thing. Yeah,
it's interesting. Interesting. So what's it like? So what was being a parent like then? What was having your kids like?
I think it took me. I think it's how long you got, but to summarise, I would say that I'm constant. I'd say that I'm continually learning and growing as a parent and having getting better and better. I think there's no one who will test your emotional regulation and your ability to trigger than your children. No one, because they will hold up the biggest mirror because they are you. You know what I mean? And that will just get you where it hurts. And it's funny because like what will get me riled up the most with the kids is completely different to what will get Rachel riled up, because our triggers and traumas are so different. Yeah. So like we can support each other throughout that, but also sometimes we're both being triggered at the same time. So I think it's about just giving them the love and time. That's all they need. All they want is love. They want time. They want cuddles. They want just presence. And especially in the early years, I would say that's what I've focused and neglected a lot of other stuff outside of that for that. Yeah. That's why I struggle with man to man, I'd say, because they are just the priority. And work, I've like sacrificed things with work, sacrificed things with friends, but I just feel like it's the most important thing to do, personally. Yeah, and I definitely agree with that, mate, because like I said, mate, I breezed through my 20s working a lot. Yeah. Trying to provide financially, you know, trying to be financially as supportive as I could. Yeah, don't get me wrong, I have those moments where I'm like, okay, yeah, I get to see him on the weekends and I'm there in the morning and I'm there at night. You know, I've got this like these beautiful moments, but I do kick myself. I'm like, well, I'm not going on 2 holidays a year, and they're taking their kids doing that, and I'm always, it's that comparison. You know what I mean? Like, am I? Because we are living in the system. We're not like going living in a commune farm where we're eating our own, growing and eating our own food. Because we are in the system, am I then neglecting them by not doing the system stuff, like taking them to Disneyland and taking them to, you know, because they're going to be like 1 foot out, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. No, and I think what I was going to get to, I think you definitely, you know, you're doing the right thing. If I was to make one, and I'm not saying I was a bad parent, because I wasn't, you know, I was a good dad, or I am a good dad, but yes, I'd be a lot more present in the moment with them. Yeah, if because I you hear that, don't you? No one has ever said, oh, I wish I just worked more. Yeah. No, everyone's, I just wish I'd spent more time with the kids. That's all anyone ever says. And it feels right as well for me. So I'm listening to that advice, but also it just feels like the right thing to do. But yeah, I'm very, especially with my son, like I just want to give him all this knowledge. Yeah. I feel like it's like a big ball inside my chest, and I just want to go, ugh. And because I'm limited to these little pockets of time, I'm like trying to like teach him all these lessons, but he's just tired and doing his own. Yeah. You know, I'm like, no, you got to be respectful, and it's, you know, you got to emotionally regulate, and trying to give him all this knowledge, and like he's just, it feels like it's just going over his head. And, probably is. And sometimes it frustrates me. I'm like, no. How old is he? 6. Yeah. He's not. I know. Like, let the kid play, will you? Emotional regulation at 6 years old, mate. It's like, it's the one thing we talk about. It's what we talk about. obviously they haven't got the tools.
Yeah.
And the worst thing is that as parents, like the only way you're going to teach your children is by demonstrating it. And that's why I try and work on myself so much, so I can show them what emotional regulation looks like.
Yeah.
Have I succeeded in doing that? No. Am I getting better? Definitely. And that's my main focus this year. I think over the last 5 years, been in a bit of survival mode.
Yeah.
With growing the family, finding a place to live, starting the business, stuff like this. This year now, as well as keeping all that ticking over, keeping fitness up and all the rest of the stuff that I love, my main focus is to really go deep on myself and allow myself some time to myself to grow and learn a bit more. Yeah.
Right, mate.
Yeah.
Almost done.
First
episode. First, yeah. Talk for another fucking 3 hours now. The good thing is, mate, the beauty of what I'm doing here is we whatever we want to do, we can do.
Yeah.
Like I've spoke to you before about, we can do the online one with a couple of us, 3 or 4 of us, topic-based.
Yeah.
You could run the topic-based if you want, like we used to done with the Zoom and stuff that time.
Yeah, I think... No, I think it's great, and I want to say, like, fair play, like, well done.
Appreciate it.
Watching it from the start. Those views on YouTube, mate, I'm always one of them.
And like I say, mate, I've always shared them with you, and they're getting better as they go. I think my ability to communicate is getting better.
Massively, yeah.
My ability to mess around with all this stuff is getting a lot better.
Yeah.
And I'm enjoying it, mate. I think that the beauty of it is the amount of people that I'm now getting to speak to.
Yeah.
Even if... I suppose the most important part is the message, obviously, but I've spoke to somebody in Boston, Florida, New Zealand. I've got one to do in Thailand, one to do in Venezuela. And it's mad. Like I'm speaking to a criminologist on Monday. Yeah. Then I've got a neuroscientist next week. People like people who are going to help me. And I'm taking from every conversation I'm having, I'm taking away knowledge, and that's all I want at the moment for myself. Anyway,
and I would say, like, I remember when we did the Man to Man, I did a year no beer talk. Were you on that Zoom call?
I think so, yeah.
Where at that time I just sort of shared my story about my addiction and how I sort of like stopped drinking and stuff like that. I did that year no beer, and I after like I had that ability just to share a reflection on my life. I remember coming away thinking, wow. That's powerful. Yeah. I remember suggesting to Dane at the time, being like, I hope he doesn't mind us using his name. I remember suggesting to him at the time, we should let all the men do that. Have a
segment.
Just tell us about yourself, because it's just nice. It allows you to and it's like, it's nice to people to feel, oh, sorry. Get too comfortable now. Too comfortable.
Fuck you.
You're like, look at this guy. No, it allows you to, almost process stuff, doesn't it?
100%.
Yeah, and that's what I think this is what you're doing. So when you reach out to people and say, will you come on the show for an hour and just have a chat with me? They're like, oh. And it allows them to, like, sometimes we ruminate in our own heads, and when we're allowed to get it out and form the sentence into the world of another person, it almost like solidifies our thoughts and opinions on things.
And I think one thing a lot of people don't realise, one of the reasons I'm doing it is because I only speak to the people at this moment in time who I'm benefiting off as well. So, like, I'll give you an example. If there's somebody who wants to come on here who's actively struggling with a mental issue, I don't feel as though that's my space to be speaking to him.
Yes.
That's for a professional,
Yes.
That's for somebody who's got far more better techniques and tools than I have.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do is I like to speak to people who've been on this journey and they've been to the dark sort of pits of their own mental state.
Yeah.
And then have climbed out the other side because, even though there's a powerful message there's always learnings, isn't there? There's always things that I can take away and go, bloody hell, I should do this, or I could try this, and I could do this, So even though, and that's what I want to do, I want people to feel empowered by telling their story. But I want to be taking things away from it. Every episode that I do is like, fucking hell, I've learned this now and this. And then over 300 episodes, it's like, well, I learned this off Matt, I learned this off this guy, and learned this off this guy. And I learned a bit of nutritional tips off this guy, and I learned some off this neuroscientist lady, and now I know all these things, you know?
Yeah.
That's sort of one of the biggest, and it also keeps me accountable. Like we were saying before, accountability is massive, isn't it?
Huge.
I think, you know, if I was to carry on doing this and in 6 months' time, people start, Lee was in the pub on the weekend, bladdered. Like, well,
it almost loses its credibility. It shouldn't, in a way. I get what you're saying. Like, why can't you also do a podcast and have a beer? You know, but I understand why. But yeah, it's like it does. You're now like creating this new person, aren't you?
Yeah.
Who does a podcast? He's a good role model. He shows up in this way, and by doing this so openly and honestly, and that's why I find it difficult to share on social media, because I think to myself, well, I'm not consistent enough, and I fail. You know what I mean? And so I think it's a very admirable thing to put yourself out there. At me, it really is.
But like you'll know this as good as anybody. What are the only things that come with not doing something, and that is failure.
Yeah.
You know, it just because I do it a lot. Sometimes I won't post nothing for a couple of weeks, and then I'll just go bang, 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 and then stop for a week. It just because the consistency's not there. You know, I'm still. It's all part of the process.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when I first started doing these, I've fucking ruined probably 3 or 4 episodes that I couldn't put out there.
Yeah.
What camera angles or the audio was shit and things like that.
Like
but,
people's feet.
Yeah. But it's all part of the process. It's all part of the process of me doing this. And, you know, a year later, this equipment's like this now. And in another year, it'll be better again. And we'll just keep developing. That's the beauty of it. What's the next 12 months bring for you, mate?
Yeah, so I really want to give myself space to learn some skills that I think I've neglected. And I think that was the reason why I couldn't go as far with man-to-man. I think I'd neglected my own development a little bit. When I stepped into that leadership role as a man within man-to-man, it wasn't necessarily leading the group, but I mean facilitating.
Yeah, go on. Carry on.
That's it. A whole podcast. I think that I neglected my own development in some aspects, and I've had a very busy. I've got 2 young kids, you know, 2 kids under the age of like 5, under the age of 4. So it is mental madness, isn't it, trying to balance everything. So I feel like there's a bit of breathing room now for me to be able to work on myself a bit deeper, go a bit harder, and just become a more round-minded man, really. I'd like to get men back into a room again under the umbrella of man-to-man. It's a really miss it. I love the accountability. I want to generate some more interest and energy around that again. And I'd really like to support dads in keeping in shape and healthy. I'm helping them to, especially dads of children under the age of like 0 to 5, 0 to 6 age group, where the unpredictability of life, because there's always something unpredictable, the sleeping regime. You can't always be that 5 a.m. guy every single day, because your kids might not go to sleep, or they might be up at 4, you know, and how can they navigate their fitness journey around this unpredictable life that you have when you're first, because if you're used to training 6 days a week, you have kids, and then suddenly you're not getting any days. How do they navigate that? And I'd like to develop something to support men, dads doing that. I'm not entirely sure how that looks yet, but that's something I'd like to sort of lean into this year. But getting man-to-man again going would be really good.
Yeah, I think so.
I think, as I explained to you just before, I think like what happened was we got men into a room, and the energy in there was electric. And I think we attracted men who were in a similar stage of their development as us. And we all gave each other the power to take huge steps in our own personal and development. So, you know, you like did the podcast, the lads did the sandpit. Yeah. I'm probably neglecting some people by not mentioning what they've got to, but everyone sort of made big, huge movements.
Yeah, massive.
Pulled themselves out of some like places and gave them a direction and purpose and almost like a support group around them, so they felt like they weren't alone in the world. They had like these guys behind them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like a subconscious blanket of like, we're here. But I also think like then the group itself outgrew us as facilitators, and we needed skills that I personally didn't have to deal with some of the logistics and politics of running a group. So hopefully I'm able to develop myself on a personal level to a point where I can take that leadership and facilitating role again and lead the men who are still in it a bit better, and also attract some other men into it to hopefully bet themselves and have conversations like this. Yeah.
What do you think some good leadership skills are?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, it's only January, mate. You said 12 months. Ask me next year. No.
The only reason I say it is
I think it's being able to have difficult conversations when they're needed, not to avoid conflict. I think I've had a bad model of conflict when I grew up in my childhood, and how it's dealt with. So I think like I haven't developed the skills to the level that I needed to be able to deal with conflict and difficult conversations. I shut off and go quiet and try to avoid them. And I think you can't do that in the leadership role. You have to be ready to step up and have a difficult conversation, ask the questions. And I think I fell short with that. And I also think a good leader needs to set the boundaries of the group, what it is, and have a clear, what's the group there to be for. But I think it's all context. I mean, I'm no leadership expert. I naturally gravitate towards a leadership position. I think I would benefit from joining a group of my own where I'm just a guy in it. So I've reached out to a few online just to be able to enjoy it and sink into it and understand how a group can work on a dynamic level. And what else?
So I just want to stop you there. I've been in leadership roles in my work for probably since I was.
So you knew the answer to this question, did you?
Yeah. I think another good thing. What I would have liked to, if I'm just giving a little bit of feedback.
Oh, go on.
So I'd have liked to have seen a good leadership skill. I think is to maybe empower other people.
Yes,
lads. So you could be the leader as such. You could be the guy who's in charge.
Yes.
But sometimes what I found was a lot of the time some of the lads would come there and it'd just be a small discussion about, what's going on in their lives. Whereas I think if sometimes in some of the meetings where we said, right, and I think you did a little bit of it, but with me, I'd say to one person sometimes, I'd give them the power. That's what I do and go, right, this is your hour. I want you to decide what you want all of us to talk about.
Yeah.
And I think in doing that, you'd get you'd get more of
they'd feel like important, a purpose, and like they'd want to they'd have like an investment within the conversation. I think that's a great idea.
Also, what you said there about joining another group, I think that would be brilliant for you, because I don't think you've probably seen the film Troy with Brad Pitt when he plays Achilles.
Yeah, class.
Yeah, it's one of my favourite films ever. I know the fucking thing word for word.
Yeah.
And he sat with Odysseus, the king, when Odysseus is trying to keep him from staying in Troy rather than him going home.
Yeah.
With the what's her name? Briseis, the woman. And Odysseus said to him, sometimes in order to lead, we have to follow.
Yeah.
So I think it's a powerful tool to have in your arsenal, is to understand how to follow in order to lead someone.
There was a desire for it.
Yeah.
We had men walking through the door, and it was, and I mean, the WhatsApp group itself, when we had it, it did the energy within that.
Brilliant. It's the best thing that ever, for me, it was the best thing I'd had.
I don't think that, because it was so nonchalant, there was zero charge for it other than the donation that we'd asked for the meeting. I think people and myself, sometimes I had to check myself and remember, took for granted about how powerful that group was to have there, knowing that if you wanted to at any point, you just drop into the WhatsApp group and you can ask any question. about anything.
Yeah.
And or support or whatever you needed, and boom, you'd have like 20 lads or so who would just be able to give you something.
Yeah.
And that in itself is so powerful, isn't it?
I think the knowledge alone in that group, you had young lads, sort of middle-aged guys like us, I'm going to say.
Middle-aged?
Yeah.
No,
well,
I thought you were talking about me when you said young lads.
How old are you now?
I'm 33.
Oh, yeah. I'm 37, I am.
Yeah, just had a really tough paper round.
Daddy, you haven't come from work. You just crawled out of bed.
Yeah.
But yeah, all different ages. And I think there was a lot of knowledge in there from, even some of the young lads. They had some brilliant brains on them.
Yeah.
Some clever lads in there. And I think, for me, I'd love to see something like that happen again. I think it was brilliant. And I think it's more powerful than what you realise, or maybe did realise at the time.
We knew. And that's why I think there was a lot of... I mean, we knew like what was going on in there and how powerful it was. We were like, what are we going to do with this? This is something else. And I think...
Was it almost overwhelming at some points, do you think?
I felt like I couldn't commit to what it needed.
Felt like it was outgrowing you almost.
That's what it did. I think the group needed the next step, and I don't
Expansion.
think we could, as the guys who set it up, we didn't know what that next step would look like.
Yeah.
And I think we struggled to come to a consensus.
Yeah.
Therefore, it lacked direction. And then there was obviously loads of other little bits that going on, which required skills that we probably didn't have at the time. Yeah.
It's really positive that you sort of realise them though. Maybe I don't know the conversations you've had with Dane or Cal, but it's important that you've realised that. I think because I had a conversation with Dane. I'm sure he won't mind me saying it the other week, and maybe the man-to-man as a general, whole needed this to grow even more. Maybe sometimes you've got to take one step back to take two steps forward.
Definitely.
And I'm not saying that, that was just something that I proposed to him, that maybe, fucking...
I would.
What I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I definitely understand what you're saying. I would always just go back to the point of like, what am I doing it for? And it would just be, I want to get men in a room or in a space, whether outside or inside, because we'd go and do fires and cold dips and stuff, and just give them that space. Yeah. And then you don't need to do anything else. Just watch. It just does it itself after that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. It'll be interesting to see what happens, mate, over the next 12 months with it. I, for one, really hope that it starts again. I hope that we can, you can get it going again and get something rocking, because for me, it was a really important part of my journey at that time. Yeah.
I think for all of us, that's what I'm saying. I think we all got so much from it. And then it was like, right, what's happening now, sort of thing. Yeah. And
we'll see. We'll see what happens, eh?
We'll see.
We'll come on here in 12 months and, man to man will be rocking and rolling again.
Yeah.
We're running out of time, mate, but for the first episode, I think, the first episode between me and you anyway, finally, after 12 months.
No, really, mate. Honestly, I'm just, I think you've done amazing to get it here. Yeah. From that idea to now sat in a room with all this gear around. Electronic.
We'll try you, mate. And like I say, it's something that I'm enjoying now, is this journey that I'm on, speaking to people, having these conversations and helping me grow as a person and become better, and in turn helping other people. I'd like to think so as well.
Yeah, it's fun, mate.
Yeah.
Like every time I listen to one of your episodes, I binge podcasts all the time, and when you put one out, I always put it on. And just listening to two people talk, there's always something in there.
Yeah.
In there, just a little nugget, you go, oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
It'll either reinforce something or it'll allow you to question something, no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, last question, mate.
Oh, go on.
If you were sat around a dinner table with four people from the past.
You do this
every episode?
Yeah. I've realised, I can't believe I didn't even think of this. Oh, God.
Four people from history who you could sit around a dinner table with. Who would they be?
God. Oh, you stumped me now, mate. You're watching me go into panic mode. I've got a little scared child inside of me now. You don't know anything it's saying to me. I don't even know. I can't even name one person. I don't even know my own name right now. It'd have to be like someone from the time of the pyramids, just to have if I was able to chat to them, obviously have a chat and see what was going on back then, just for my own interest. I don't know. This is going to change. I'll think of everyone on the way home when I'm in the car.
Tutankhamun, then go with him.
Yeah,
Tutankhamun.
Yeah, alive. Oh God, I'm overthinking it. Dead or alive? Did you say? Or
Can be anything.
Could be anything. Don't me, mate. I wish I'd prepped this. I can't think of anyone. I actually can't. My brain's gone absolutely blank to death.
Family?
Oh, my nan would always be there.
Yeah,
100%. Just to, wow, feel the love again.
Yeah, man.
And
who's your heroes from the past?
What? I can't think, mate. I actually can't think of anyone. You have to just wait. I know we're out of time. Hopefully they're saved by the bell.
I'll add it into the comments at the end of the video then.
You have to give me some help. Sports, stars.
Movie stars, film stars, music.
I would always have had Will Smith until he went all strange. I would have always had, this question for me was Will Smith straight away. I admired him so much.
Well, we'll go with Will Smith then. You can ask him what the fuck he was playing at then, can't you?
As soon as that happened, it was like, that stumped, my sort of question.
One more, mate. One more. Come on. Come on.
God. Maybe my dad's dad. My granddad. I only met him when I was younger, so I'd like to sort of maybe have a chat with him, see what he's about, because I only know him through my dad's stories. So like actually have a chat with him myself, and see what he's all about myself. He's a bit of a character. So
that's it, mate.
God, blew it. Blew it the last minute.